Hey, what is up guys, MKBHD here, and this is it. This is the OnePlus 6. So it's been interesting to follow OnePlus for the last couple of years, all the way from the beginning, from the OnePlus 1 days, the flagship killer mentality, the never settle, and then look at how the trends move all the way until what they've developed into today. So let's look at the spec sheet first. This guy's rocking Snapdragon 845 and Adreno 630, 6 or 8 gigs of RAM, a 6.3-inch 2280 by 1080 AMOLED display. It's got a 3300 milliamp hour battery and dual cameras, a 16 megapixel main sensor and a 20 megapixel secondary camera, and a price tag under 600 bucks. So again, pretty classic OnePlus. They're sticking to their guns of delivering big numbers and impressive specs for a lower than expected price. So with all of that, here are my impressions. And really what a lot of people are gonna have the most strong reaction to, including me, is the new design of the OnePlus 6. So they, just like everyone else this year, have 2018ized their phone. It's got dual cameras, glass back, big screen, and a notch. I mean, that's it. That's just like every phone we've seen in the last 6 months, and probably every phone for the next 6 months. So OnePlus joins that crew, and this is what their version of it looks like. And honestly, I think it looks pretty good. I don't know if it's just that I've been getting used to notches in phones for the past few months, or maybe that this one's a little bit smaller. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I think this phone overall looks pretty good. The text and icons go right up to the edge in the corners. The bottom chin is pretty small, so it's not bad. The glass back is a little more interesting. It's got that signature OnePlus curve to it, so it's the same shape as the rest of their phones. It adds a little weight though from being glass. No wireless charging though. That's kind of a turnoff, but that's just the first impression. There's actually 3 different glass back finishes: a mirror glossy back that kind of looks like a ceramic, a soft white with this rose gold metal accent color, and yes, a matte black. Kinda. I mean, it's much more matte than glossy. I'd say it has this kind of a sheen to it in certain lights. It feels more like, I'd describe it like a frosted black glass. But at the end of the day, I'm still gonna put a D-brand skin on it just to hide the fingerprints and add grip to what you get with a glass phone, but that's just me. But continuing on the back, the new fingerprint reader is in the same place, but it's a bit smaller. So you might remember it was a circle on the back of the OnePlus 5T. I liked that. This one has less surface area, and it sits right below the vertically oriented dual cameras that pretty much everyone is adopting now. This dual camera setup is actually kind of interesting though. Usually you just kind of assume when you have dual cameras on the back of a phone, you got your main camera sensor, and then the secondary one's usually your telephoto for portrait mode and 2x zoom, things like that. These 2 cameras are actually the same focal length. So the primary camera is a Sony IMX519, a 16 megapixel sensor with an f1.7 aperture and OIS. And then your secondary camera is a Sony IMX376K, a 20 megapixel sensor, again at f1.7, and they don't say whether it's optically stabilized or not, so I would guess it's not. So a secondary camera of the same focal length, but a higher resolution for what, sharpness, maybe some detail stuff, I guess, maybe portrait mode help. I don't really know exactly. This is something we're gonna have to test for the full review. But definitely stay tuned on places like Instagram and Twitter, where I'll share sample photos I take on this camera. But that's a curious one. But around the front is really where it looks the newest, with that huge new display, the notch up top. This is what people love talking about. To be fair, it is one of the smallest notches. There's just a camera, some sensors, and your earpiece up there, and then you end up with an 84% screen to body ratio. But this is the new design. This is what we're getting in 2018. It's exactly what we expected. So okay, we get it. OnePlus has taken cues and hints from 2018 and other players, and they've updated their smartphone. But they've also actually taken things from what they've done well in the past, and they've stuck to their guns on things like dash charging, on things like Oxygen OS. They kept the alert slider, they kept the headphone jack, and they stuck with 1080p. So Oxygen OS really is great. You could barely call it a skin, but it's one of those few skins on top of Android 8.1 that doesn't try to do too much. So it's near stock, it's always one of the first with software updates, and it has a couple tweaks here and there to make things interesting. They still have the shelf next to the launcher, cool. There's a toggle to hide the top notch if you're not super into that. That's new to Oxygen OS. And this time they've also added gestures if you want to get rid of the buttons at the bottom and fully maximize your screen real estate and do swiping instead. I don't really like this as much. It's not quite as smooth as I would have liked or anywhere near something on an iPhone. That's the reason I'm not using it all the time, but I think this can be improved with software updates. They also tossed in some improvements to the gaming mode as well. There's a dark mode theme, which can do wonders with that AMOLED display. So yeah, just a nice little suite of improvements over the mostly stock Android, I'd say is my favorite way to go. And on top of all of that, it's got really good, I just really like these buttons, these really tactile, clicky buttons, probably one of the most underrated things about this. Bluetooth 5.0, and did I mention it keeps the headphone jack? Like, this thing checks a lot of boxes. So basically these cameras and the battery life are the two things that need to be deeply tested, but I can tell you right now, after I've used this phone for the past couple days, and it is a really promising one. It's fast, it's smooth, it does a lot of the things well that I hope a phone does well, and it's just those last couple things that we'll see about. But for those of you wondering, I will be doing a full review of the OnePlus 6. People were asking that. That's definitely happening. But so far, so good. Let me know what you think. Till the next one, thanks for watching. Peace.